Introducing Activator's dealer-focused customer data platform. Our CDP collects data from multiple sources, including first and third-party data, to create a unified customer profile. The advanced CDP with data management layer identifies, groups, and manages duplicate customer records, spam, and invalid data, allowing for targeted multi-channel marketing campaigns to be sent to both passive customers and active shoppers. See the difference Activator can make for your business. Visit us online to get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another ASOTU Edge webinar. Today we're joined by our friends at Activator. We're going to be talking about how cleaning your dealership's data drives marketing automation results. So I'm going to kick it over to our hosts, Paul and Kyle, as well as our friend Bobby Gaudreau at Activator. He's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing. Take it away, guys.
Okay, we're back for another ASOTU Edge webinar, and Kyle, he had kind of that mindset last night where he couldn't sleep like it's Christmas Eve because we get to talk about one of his favorite things ever, data automation.
The data. I love nerding out on this stuff. I mean,
no.
Look, I'm not gonna say that I was the first person to ever say the acronym
I'll
CDP
say it. You
on
totally were
a stage in automotive at a conference, but
in Miami.
I might say it.
You did. I think I brought you. I feel like I brought you to that as my guest, and then you just like dominated the place.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I was hanging at Glenn Pash, had me there. It was good. It was a fun one.
Well, you said. Look, well, let me just say, you said CDP from the stage, and I swear, I was in the back of the room, and I watched like half of the room like grab a pen and like,
there it is, and then 3 years later, here we are. No, but I love nerding out about this because the conversation has flipped from like you need a CDP, which was kind of the original thing, which is true at some level, but what you really need is the ability to activate the real people that are in your database with intention and empathy and the right timing and all of those things, which is and the CDP is really just like the enablement. It's the thing that's the starting gate for getting there. Mm-hmm. So the nerding out, it kind of like brings my two worlds together. It's like this nerding out data, oh boy, with like real human touch, interactivity, connecting with customers, bringing them back, retention, loyalty, all of those types of things.
Yeah, not wasting people's time, speaking to them on their own terms about what they want to hear about and all of those things. Did you know that in an iPhone, if you open up your contacts, that some people, I don't know if you have the feature turned on or off, it will tell you how many duplicates you have.
I don't even want to.
And I went through this exercise because Nathan, our producer, was like, oh, I have duplicates. And like the big joke is like, oh, Paul's going to have tons of duplicates because he's terrible with this stuff. And Nathan had 12 and I had 0. So.
I think your phone is lying to you because I just scrolled a little bit because my phone's lying to me too. A lot of people in auto know, former Googler, now marketer in auto. Andrew Diffenderfer goes by Diff, right?
Oh, that's a very common name.
Very common. So it makes sense that I have one. No. I have 5 of him. I have Andrew Diff, then I have 4 more Andrew Diffenderfers. There you go.
Okay.
That proves that even your boy has struggles.
I mean, my phone would never give me incorrect information ever.
Ever.
All right, let's bring on today's guest. I think we better pull up from this one. Bobby Gaudreau from Activator. Welcome. This is this number 2 or number 3 times we've been together on this?
This is lucky number 3.
Hey, there we go.
Third time's a charm. Third time's a charm. Welcome back. Excited to talk about this. And now that we're all like seasoned pros, we know how to not get in trouble.
There you go. Bobby, let's go back to that because, Paul and I were both interested. We kind of knew what the topic a little bit was coming. We were both interested to see if we had done our own personal data cleanup. I clearly have not. If Andrew Diffenderfer is looking at this, if I can't get a hold of you, I've got a problem. But maybe I can't because maybe I've got some different data. Let's start with this because I think we've gone through a little bit of rung of like why a CDP, what a CDP means. We've dispelled the narrative of like it's this way out there thing that you can't obtain. But what's what's the issue with like the starting gate, the setup that people haven't maybe addressed at this point?
Yeah. I mean, I think the starting gate, we like to talk about it as the foundation. And so, this space is getting crowded, and there's a lot of good companies in this space. But what we find is there's a huge focus, as there should be, but there's a huge focus on saying, okay, let's look at all of the first party data sites that are living on a dealer's website, right? The chat companies and the telephony companies. And I mean, listen, that's the gold of first party data. But if the point of marketing, right? The point of marketing is being able to market to an individual and to understand that individual. You have to have all of the relevant data points of somebody, and you need to have that foundation. And so our kind of thesis has been from the beginning is that foundation starts with the customer data in the DMS and then in the CRM, because everything eventually starts and ends with the DMS data. So all ROI reports, all sales and service transactions are ultimately going to live in that DMS data. And so it's got to start there. And so that's the foundation. And that becomes the anchor for when we set up a customer on our CDP, we're anchoring that on the DMS data. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about what do we find when we try to first build that anchor. And there's got to be a lot. You just don't just move it over and put it in the CDB. Otherwise, you're looking for some trouble. But now we have that anchor. And then that way, as we start to eventually pull in other first party data, it has something to anchor itself into. Because otherwise, you've got flawed data. And then, you gave your example of your colleague in there where you have 5 different versions of him in your phone. Well, all 5 of those versions might have relevant information. One might have his cell phone. One might have his email. One might have his birth date. One might have, some little personal note that you typed in there. And which one do you pick? Which one do you leverage? And you're talking on a phone where maybe you have about, maybe a couple hundred or 1,000 records in your phone. Now you multiply that to a dealership that might have 50,000, 100,000 records in there. And it becomes an impossible task to try to manage without some automation and technology.
I guess my first question is why is the DMS the anchor? I think maybe a lot of people there's like an easy way to say like, well, obviously the DMS would be the record. That's the accounting. That's the keeper of the books. That's where all the transactions happen. But it's been a like left alone, not touched entity for so long. How can we make that the anchor, but not have all this waste or issues doing the things that the CDP is meant to actively do out, once you have the data in it? How do you make sure that data is actually a good anchor?
Yeah. So what we've developed, and this has happened through some trial and error from doing some things right and then doing some things wrong and making a mistake and then fixing it, is we look at like if we had a dealer to come on board with us and said, well, we don't care about the DMS data and our CDP, we would probably say, well, we might not be the right solution for you, because that's where this starts. What we've done is we've created something that we're referring to as a data management layer. And so constantly, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, our technology is constantly monitoring that information that's coming in and out of the DMS to ensure that record is clean. So, you hear a lot of terms out there, the golden record, a unified record, like these these mean something, and there's nothing wrong with those terms. Our original approach was we said, okay, well, we're going to go in and we're going to go into the DMS and we're going to find, there's 5 Pauls in there, right? And there's Paul Daly, D-L-E-Y, D-A-L-I-E, right? Paul J. Daly. And we're going to say, well, we're going to take those 5 records of Paul, and then we're going to create the primary marketing record. And then that's the record that we're going to market to. And that's the record that we're going to report on. And oftentimes people might refer to that as the golden record. But for the same reasons that you mentioned in the beginning of this, you've got 5 records for someone in your phone, and there might be relevant information on all 5 of those records. So what we ended up doing is we're creating a customer profile, and we've got a customer profile ID, as opposed to just saying we've got this one individual record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now at any given time, when there's another duplicate that comes into the system, or there's another malformed record, it's bumping up against that grouping that we created.
So I think for people who are trying to like get their head around this, there are a lot of definitions out there. A lot of people talk about things in a different way, which adds to some of the confusion. I think it slows adoption. How do we set up some ground rules? Like how do we define bad data, and how do we address it in an automated way? I think that you may have prepared something for this. But I think that like defining it, giving a clean example, like, hey, this is how we define it. And I think at that point, a lot of people might like the light goes on and be like, I have a lot of that in my system. You know what I mean?
100%. So when we set out on this, we try to, like, let's say we can kind of quantify this and qualify this. So we really look at bad data in three different definitions, broad definitions. So there's duplicate records, there's malformed records, and then there's bad email addresses. And double click on bad email addresses. That could be invalid. That can be spam trap. That can be, just it's not there.
Explain. Can you for the back of the class explain what a malformed record is?
Yeah, a malformed record would be a first cousin of a duplicate record. So it's a malformed record has some partial information in there that would make it difficult to actually do a good job of marketing to. So it might have, Paul's home address and email address, and it might have your VIN in there, but there's no actual name, and that might hit the criteria in most marketing systems, whether that's a marketing automation system or an automated email system. That might get put into an audience, and then it might get actually, into the green room and get staged to be emailed out. This is why we sometimes get 4 or 5 emails from a company, and we say, please stop emailing me. And they said, no problem. And then 3 days later, we get another email again, because they just keep pulling all these things in there. So the malformed record is just, it's not a complete record. And there's stuff in there that's going to create a poor customer experience, and probably worse, really hurt eventual reporting.
I think the tricky one in there that you also glazed over was the spam record.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The spam trigger. I think it's just something that dealers don't even think could be in their data, right? But what does that do to an overall ability to market?
Oh God. the spams are that's the most dangerous thing out there. And I think, there are some slides in here we can pull up. The number of actually missing email addresses. So if we're looking at this report here, so this is what you're looking at here as a data quality dashboard. And so we can see, and this is assumed that we've already gone through and cleaned up all of the duplicate records. So talk us
through this before, just because it's kind of small on the screen. And can you just talk us through this from top to bottom, just to set the table here?
Yeah, totally. So we're looking at, kind of going, I suppose counterclockwise here. So what we're looking at right now are the email records. But when you look at that, the total number of people, this is assuming that there might be 100,000 records in this dealership, but we've gone through the process and we've identified and then grouped together all of the records for an individual person. And so now at this point in time, this dealership has 54,215 individuals that it could market to.
Of those, so this could have easily been 100,000 records.
Easily.
Now
we
has
see this
been
every time.
What do you typically see in something like this?
It's usually 20, 30, 40%. It's 20, 30,
40% what? Less than the total number of records?
20 to 40% of a dealership's database is made up of duplicate records.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Wow. And so this dealership now has 54,000 people approximately that they could market to. And before that, we'd say, how many people in your database? Oh, we've got 100,000. Well, no, you have maybe 100,000 records, but you have 54,000 people that you can actually market to. And then of those 54,000 people that you can market to, less than half actually have an email address that's valid that you can reach. So that means that half of the people in your database, you can't actually deliver a message to via email at all. You can't reach them.
Yeah.
And then And then you've got people with no valid email address. So then there's almost 30,000 people that have no valid email address at all.
Of the 54,000.
Correct. Yeah.
Got it.
And then you can go across.
This is typical. This isn't like the worst case scenario. This is pretty normal.
This is pretty standard. And one of the very first webinars I did with you guys, and we talked about the data is like a refrigerator in a break room, and this is the cause and effect of just all sorts of different people coming in and out of this DMS forever. Service schedulers are important, right? We love service schedulers, but they're one of the biggest culprits for duplicate records that go into a system, because someone goes in, they put in you want to talk about a malformed record. I just put in my email address, and I slam that 7 a.m. service time, and then that just created a new record in the DMS. And then now all of a sudden that just became another one of these records. But thankfully now we can catch that.
So assuming we've cleaned up all these records, because I think that's like ground level, right? What do we think about the utilization? So we've got those 25,000. We've got to be as effective as we possibly can. Where do we go from that? How do we actually start to make some decisions about what to do with this good data that we have at our fingertips?
Yeah. So now we've got the anchor in the CDP, right? And so now from our standpoint, we look at marketing and kind of activating that data in two different levels, right? So we have a series of 7 journeys that we run out of the DMS. So the whole idea behind that was to cast a wide and deliberate net over a dealer's DMS. So those 7 journeys, there's 4 service journeys and 3 sales journeys. So you kind of think of a scenario when a dealer wants to stay top of mind and keep people engaged, we're casting that net. So people, based on certain trigger criteria, they would enter into that journey automatically. So this is where we run our equity marketing. This is where we enter first year service follow-up. This is where we follow up with, service, lost soul service. So there's a number of tried and true journeys that we've been running successfully now for a number of years. So those get triggered in automatically. And then we've also, we've got in the middle of that, we have what we call custom campaigns. So 10 years ago, this would have been called an email blast, right? Oh, we want to do an email blast. But now we've got the ability to, you now have something going on at the dealership. I have these, 10.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yep.
Let's just be very honest. Let's do an email blast is still what most people say. You're very gracious in saying 10 years ago. But I think the vernacular is super important. Because when you use the word campaign, right? Let's launch an email campaign. It immediately gets you thinking and trains you to think to who, right? Who is getting this campaign? What is the intention of it?
So right.
Who is it hitting? And so I think that let's not adopt the fact that we used to say it. I think that that's actually a point, I think, of education. I really believe that when you put the right words to something, it teaches so much more than you ever will.
Yeah, instead of like, let's send an email blast, let's launch an email campaign.
Right, it's serious now. Now we're sitting up. It's a campaign. Yeah. We're allocating resources toward it. It's like, oh yeah, just do an email blast. Just hit send, right?
yeah, and cross your fingers. But I mean, so our campaign. And I mean, again, these things mean something like a journey, right? And traditional marketing automation, a journey is like it's just constantly running. Like someone qualifies in or out, but that thing's just running behind the scenes. Like once we set it up with a dealership and we say these are the criteria, we don't have to touch it, and neither does the dealer, because it just is automatically triggered. A campaign, though, suggests that there's a start and an end, and I've got a very specific goal in mind over this period of time. Maybe it's we're doing a customer appreciation event and we're going to give out free hot dogs on Saturday. It's I'm a Lexus dealership and it's December to remember, and I'm going to run this for 90 days, right?
Right.
So we have the ability to execute on that using our technology that's now delivered through Salesforce's Marketing Cloud. So best of class tech on that. And then we just rolled out over the last month or so, a segmentation tool. So that segmentation tool, there you go. So that segmentation tool now allows a dealer to go in and start to build micro audiences in these smaller audiences. And so right now we're live and in color with DMS. We're in the process of rolling out so all of this data quality, this whole data management layer that we've been successfully running now for a couple of years with DMS. We're now going to launch with CRM. That's a whole nother monster, right? With the data in a CRM.
That's even more intense of a data deficiency right there.
Yeah.
So when we made this decision a couple of years ago, we said, let's get most likely the data in the DMS is going to be cleaner than the CRM. This is now granted the CRM is sexier. This is where a lot more stuff happens. So, we kind of, I don't want to say we got criticized, but some people say, well, why didn't you start here and why didn't you start there? It's now becoming apparent to a lot of people why we started the way that we did. So now we've taken all those learnings, all the black eyes, all the bump shins, all the bruises that we got perfecting this with DMS, and now we're applying it to CRM. And we're specifically starting with VIN solutions, and then we're going to roll it out. So this has just been our methodology from the beginning. But now we have the ability to take that from CRM products, so people can start segmenting the CRM data. And by the way, we'll run 2 journeys against CRM data. One will be around unsold floor follow-up, and then the other will be around unsold internet leads. And then in about a month or two, we'll start bringing in website data, which frankly, a lot of other CDPs or CDXPs have been doing for a while. And that's where a lot of them started. So now we're going to be doing that as well, but we're anchoring that now to the DMS data.
I think that's the interesting part, because I do see a lot of this like marketing moving to CDP, and this is like DMS moving to the website, right? And so it's just like it's a different meet in the middle. But I appreciate the like, no, we're going to start with the anchor, which is like probably it's also honestly the most limited data source, right? But we can control it. We know those users, we know those customers a bit more. So I think it really is a good thing.
One other thing too, guys, that I would just call out, because we're in the process right now of we were invited to participate in an RFP, and one of the questions in there is kind of talking about what do you guys do with the email appends, and what are you doing with duplicating the data, and like. I started, kind of the second software company I worked at 15 years ago was an email newsletter marketing company that, we were talking about email appends and data quality 15 years ago, right? Doing a one-off email append or doing a, doing, some kind of a, deduplication process like you could do on your phone once. That's not what we're talking about, right? Like that, the analogy I'm painting there, that's like taking a, over the counter 800 milligram Advil when you broke your leg, right? And what you really need is surgery and a beta blocker and physical therapy, right? And
great illustration.
So we're doing this constantly behind the scenes. This we do appends, we do all this stuff, but that's like part of a much larger process on what we're providing for dealers all the time with our data management layer.
All right. I want to make sure we're at 22-ish minutes. I want to make sure we get to everything. What would you like to talk about next? Because we wanted to talk about approach, data sources. Is there something that you're like, especially the slides that we have teed up? I want to make sure we share the best things.
Yeah, I think maybe just to kind of like, so some of this, if you, there's a slide in there that's, I'm not going to ask you guys to memorize it, but there's a slide in there that just shows our technology stack. And I think that just might be helpful. And and that will just tie some of
a good one
together for the audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you mentioned the CDP engine, you mentioned Salesforce integration.
Yeah. Sorry. Excuse me.
It's
allergy. In hindsight, this probably I should have asked you guys to throw this one up first. But what you're looking at here is this is essentially how our system works. So on the left-hand side, right, these are the data sources that are going to be funneling into anybody's CDP. So you've got
we have web traffic, CRM, DMS, and all the
correct.
others. Yep.
And then from there, that goes into people love saying data lakes now, right? But so this goes into what we use Microsoft Azure for this. So this goes into our system. So what we did is we wrote an algorithm that allows us to actually go into a dealer's DMS and into a CRM, and we identify and then group together all of the duplicate records. And then that allows us to then create this group of the 6 Pauls or the 10 Kyles, right? And then we take that group, and that doesn't, I mean, that was a lot of development, testing, and modification to get that right.
It's such a critical element to making sure you get that one right, or else the whole thing falls apart.
That's it, right? So that becomes the start of the foundation. And then that now goes into our CDP. And so our CDP is really a combination of Snowflake and then Salesforce Sales Cloud. So now we take that group, and this has been kind of our evolved hypothesis on this. So now we take the group of those 6 records, and then we create a profile group on that. Because there might be one record that has all the service information, one record that has all the right contact information. So now we can keep a running score of all of the marketing that went out, all of the service history, all of the sales history. And then we put that against another algorithm that we wrote. And now we actually predict now when something comes into a journey, comes into one of these custom campaigns, AKA email blast, right? Comes into the segmentation tool. Now we can actually predict what contact record that we want to use, and what channel would be the best channel to use, because there might be a good cell phone number or a better email address, and we can monitor what people have been engaging with in the past to make that prediction.
So you may not actually clean it out unless you can recognize that it's bad. You just use the best thing in real time when you know that that's the method that they're most likely to respond to or interact with.
Yeah, 100%. Now we did, and I kind of, accidentally skipped over this before, but from a email perspective, we use a partner called AtData. And AtData is probably the 800-pound. There's other vendors in the space that use them as well, but they're probably the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to monitoring email. So they sniff out the spam traps, and they sniff out the invalid email addresses, and then we can use them as a partner to actually then enrich that information afterwards. So that's kind of just sitting like a force field over all of the marketing, and now we have that profile. And now we are teed up for whatever marketing that we're doing. So today we are full service marketing. So we execute all the marketing, and then we're exploring options on, how do we eventually look at exporting that information to whoever a dealer wants to use. But we want to make sure that that data quality threads through. Otherwise, it's just going to be a poor customer experience.
I always want to go back to this whenever we're having this conversation with CDP, and if a dealer is sitting there going, okay, I've heard this acronym, or maybe I haven't heard this acronym, and this is like the first thing that I've dipped into. I'm trying to figure out if this is the right project for me to take on. What are 1 or 2 questions that you should, like, that a company or organization or dealership or dealer group should be asking themselves if this is the right thing that should be the next way to go for them? What are those questions they should be asking to try and figure that out?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the two questions that we've been asking when we've been walking into dealerships is, who runs your marketing and who runs your data, right? And usually the person that runs the marketing is at lunch, and then you can never get a meeting with them.
Hey, I resemble that.
I'm just kidding. They don't want to meet with the vendor, right? But when we ask about who is who's managing the data, we kind of get this deer in the headlights look, right? But I think it's really understanding, like, the question to ask is, what is the health of my data today, and how do I understand? Because you're likely doing marketing, right? You're doing social campaigns, and you're doing some form of email marketing, and you're doing some form of inbound, outbound marketing. And if there's probably somewhere between a 99 and 100% chance you're introducing duplicate records into your marketing campaigns, and you are introducing bad email addresses into your marketing campaigns, whether you're doing it yourself or you've got another vendor accessing that information. And that means if you're marketing to partial records, you're reporting on partial records, right? So then the second big question is, how well do I trust the efficacy of the reporting that I'm getting? And how do I know really what's working and what's not working? We now have the ability to really kind of prove that out for dealers, or at least give them a baseline of this is what it should be looking like.
Well,
Yeah,
Bobby, go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I was going to say, it sounds like the core question is do I want to just take 20% of my budget and just send it off into nowhere, right? If the answer is no, then we might want to look at this. There's the hardcore question. Bobby, absolutely been a pleasure. Always fun nerding out, geeking out with you, but also getting to the brass tacks of what this thing and what we can be doing in the industry to serve and communicate with our customers better. Excellent having you on. We'll talk soon.
Thanks. It's always great to be here, guys. Thank you.
Introducing Activator's dealer-focused customer data platform. Our CDP collects data from multiple sources, including first and third-party data, to create a unified customer profile. The advanced CDP with data management layer identifies, groups, and manages duplicate customer records, spam, and invalid data, allowing for targeted multi-channel marketing campaigns to be sent to both passive customers and active shoppers. See the difference Activator can make for your business. Visit us online to get started.
All right, everyone, that is a wrap. We hope you enjoyed it. If you or someone you know missed it, you can get it on our website. Go to ASOTU.com, click on media, and drop down to webinars. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.